The ranger stopped mid-step. Something was hanging from the lower branch of a pine, oddly out of place against the foggy expanse of Grey Pines National Forest. It was a hiking backpack, faded and torn, swaying faintly in the morning wind. The tag, still legible beneath dirt and moss, read J. Kessler. That name hadn't been spoken publicly in nearly 7 years. The date was October 3rd, 2023. The discovery was made during a routine wildlife trail inspection in the Oregon-Washington border region, specifically the Black Hollow Perimeter Trail, an area known among rangers for its rough terrain and rare foot traffic. When Park Ranger Olivia Mendez radioed it in, the tone of her voice was calm, but those who knew the case felt the weight immediately. The Kessler-Doyle disappearance had been filed away with a half-dozen conspiracy threads and no tangible answers. Now, it was back. Inside the bag, investigators later documented a cracked GPS tracker, a faded photograph of 2 young people smiling at the edge of a lake, and a weathered notebook containing a partially legible list of trail coordinates. More chillingly, tied into one of the backpack straps was a set of nylon cords, knotted tightly, as if it had once supported significant weight. The media would latch on to the most visceral headline, "Remains found hanging from tree," but the reality, as always, was more fragmented. The backpack was only the beginning. J. Kessler and Alana Doyle, both 26, had vanished in late October of 2016 while traveling through southern Washington. They had been documenting offbeat trails for a low-budget YouTube series called Untamed Roads, focusing on lesser-known forest paths, ghost towns, and rural legends. In their final video, posted just 2 days before they disappeared, the couple stands beside a rusted fire lookout tower near Black Hollow. "No one's been up here since like 1994, Jay says. "We're not even sure if it's structurally sound." They laugh, pan the camera toward the thick, wind-swept trees, and fade to black. It was titled Lost Tower. They were last seen checking into a roadside motel in Trout Fork, Oregon. A security camera at the motel's front desk caught their arrival around 8:23 p.m. on October 27th. Alana waved to the clerk. Jay carried 2 trail packs and what looked like a drone case. The following morning, October 28th, a trucker recalled seeing their gray Subaru parked near mile marker 47 on the north entrance of Grey Pines. After that, nothing. For weeks, law enforcement, volunteers, and forest search crews combed the area. A dozen miles of trail, logging roads, and even an abandoned ranger station were searched. Helicopters scanned thermal anomalies. Scent dogs picked up nothing. The couple's vehicle was eventually towed, still locked, with camping gear inside. There were no signs of struggle, no signs of departure. Their digital footprint stopped abruptly. The last phone ping came at 6:12 a.m. on the 28th, Jay's phone, bouncing off a tower near the lake. Alana's phone was never recovered. At the time, there had been speculation. Some believed they had simply gotten lost. Others whispered darker theories, that they'd stumbled upon something or someone they shouldn't have. A few online communities fixated on a historical incident from 1983 when a solo hiker had vanished under similar circumstances in the same forest corridor. But those connections never led anywhere. Now, in 2023, the backpack's re-emergence was enough to mobilize local authorities and forensic teams. Within 48 hours, the FBI reopened the case. By October 5th, the search team had cordoned off a 4-acre radius around the discovery point. A drone-mounted scan revealed bones tangled in the upper branches of a nearby Douglas fir, approximately 15 meters from the trail, partially suspended in thick climbing cord. The forest canopy had shielded the remains for years. Recovery teams worked for days, using harnesses and pulleys to retrieve the fragmented remains. What they recovered was skeletal and incomplete. A single humerus, 2 ribs, and a partial mandible were lifted down under extreme care. Forensic anthropologists quickly confirmed the bone structure belonged to an adult male, likely under 30. It was consistent with Jay Kessler. No trace of Alana Doyle was found. Back at the ranger station, crime scene analysts catalogued the backpack. Inside the notebook, one page, likely written in haste, contained coordinates leading deeper into the woods. The handwriting, according to a sample previously provided by Jay's sister, matched his. The last entry read, "Alana doesn't want to keep going. Last night was bad. Something's wrong with the ridge markers. We backtrack tomorrow." I think the word think was underlined twice and smeared with water damage, possibly tears or rain. It was the final legible note. 7 years ago, the case had gone cold due to lack of evidence, inconsistent witness timelines, and no forensics. Now, not only was the investigation reopened, but it began with the quiet return of something physical, a thread pulled from time. Police combed through the original file, phone logs, drone footage, parking receipts, weather patterns. They retraced the original search grid, this time focusing on overlooked ravines and deer trails. Within days, searchers uncovered a second object, a rusted GoPro camera buried under tree roots, less than 50 meters from the hanging remains. The memory card was corroded but intact. Specialists began the process of data extraction. For the families, it meant reopening wounds never fully closed. For the detectives, it was a second chance at solving one of the state's most unsettling missing persons cases. And for the forest, silent and indifferent, it meant nothing at all. The extraction of the GoPro footage was painstaking. The device's exterior was caked with dirt and corrosion, but forensic technicians managed to recover approximately 23 minutes of video recorded during the days leading up to Jay and Alana's disappearance. The footage painted a complex picture, raw, fragmented, and disquieting. The video began innocuously enough. Jay and Alana laughing as they packed gear beside their Subaru, planning routes on crumpled topographic maps. Jay held the camera, narrating their itinerary with casual enthusiasm. "Tomorrow we hit the ridge trail. Supposedly, it's got the best views, but it's tricky. The markers are old. Some say they're wrong or missing." Alana chimed in nervously. "I don't know about that, Jay. The last time we checked, the weather looked iffy." The weather soon became a focal point. On the second day, the couple's progress slowed as thick fog rolled in. In several clips, Alana's voice is tense, expressing doubt about continuing. Jay insists they push forward, convinced they are close to the abandoned lookout tower. Yet, the footage reveals moments of confusion, GPS signals flickering, compass readings contradicting, and repeated backtracking. The last recorded moments on the camera show Jay stopping abruptly, pointing the lens toward dense underbrush. "Look at this," he whispers. "The marker's not here. Maybe it fell or was moved." The camera swings sharply to the left, capturing shadowy branches and a glimmer of something metallic, too blurred to identify. Then the video cuts out. These fragments were consistent with the coordinates found in Jay's notebook, confirming the couple had indeed been off the map trails, navigating through difficult terrain. Investigators then examined the security footage from the motel and gas stations around Trout Fork, cross-referencing timestamps with the recovered GPS data. They noticed something unusual. On the night of October 27th, the couple made 2 calls from Jay's phone. The first was brief, to an unknown number, lasting just 12 seconds at 9:45 p.m. The second, at 10:10 p.m., was a 45-second call to a local contact labeled in Jay's phone as Rick. Police interviewed Rick, Richard Howard, a 53-year-old logger and part-time hunting guide familiar with the Black Hollow area. Howard acknowledged knowing Jay casually and confirmed Jay had called him for advice about trail conditions. But during the interview, Howard's story began to waver. Initially, he claimed he told Jay to avoid the ridge due to recent heavy rain causing landslides. Later, Under pressure, he admitted he also warned Jay about an old, unofficial logging road that was dangerous and sometimes closed by the Forest Service. However, Howard could not clearly recall Jay's exact plans or whether he ever saw the couple in person. More puzzling was Howard's inconsistent timeline. Phone records placed him in town at 11 p.m. that night, yet he claimed to have been home all evening. A neighbor contradicted him, stating they saw Howard's truck leave the property briefly around 10:30 p.m. The inconsistency raised eyebrows. Meanwhile, analysis of cell tower logs indicated that after 6 a.m. on October 28th, Jay's phone moved erratically between signals, jumping in a pattern inconsistent with a traveling vehicle or a steady hike. Forensic specialists speculated this might be due to falling or wandering within a small radius, or possibly attempts to move while injured. In parallel, Alana's phone remained silent. Despite repeated searches, no signal, no movement, no sign of its existence surfaced. This deepened the mystery of her whereabouts. Detectives also began interviewing family members and friends for insight. Jay's sister, Meredith Kessler, recalled a sudden change in his demeanor in the week before the trip. He seemed distracted, more tense than usual, she said. He mentioned something about finding something in the forest, but he wouldn't say what. Alana's best friend, Elise Moreno, described the couple's enthusiasm for off-the-grid locations, but admitted Alana had been uneasy about this particular trip. She texted me a few days before leaving, saying she wasn't sure about the route. It was unlike her to hesitate. Re-examining the original search efforts revealed further frustrations. The first responders had relied heavily on aerial scans and standard paths, yet the dense canopy and rugged topography had concealed critical areas. The new coordinates from the backpack's notebook led teams to spots previously untouched by search parties. As the team expanded their grid, they uncovered more ambiguous clues: a torn piece of fabric snagged on a branch, traces of footwear prints near a creek bed, and a makeshift fire pit containing charred remains of what forensic tests later confirmed were food items consistent with Jay and Alana's known diet. Tensions began rising among investigators. Was the couple's disappearance accidental, or was there a third party involved? The suspicious calls to Howard, his contradictory statements, and the odd nighttime truck movements suggested potential involvement beyond mere misfortune. Further complicating matters, a local hiker came forward with a disturbing claim. Months after the disappearance, he had encountered a man fitting Howard's description near the Black Hollow trailhead, carrying a large backpack and acting nervously. The witness said the man avoided eye contact and seemed in a hurry. When questioned, Howard denied ever leaving his property after sunset. The team obtained search warrants to review Howard's property and electronic devices. Forensic analysis uncovered partial DNA traces on a recovered piece of rope found near the hanging remains. Too degraded for a complete profile, but enough to exclude Jay and Alana. It suggested another individual's presence, intensifying suspicions. Back at the FBI's forensic lab, technicians worked around the clock to recover data from the damaged GoPro and analyze all physical evidence. Simultaneously, ground teams expanded efforts into rugged caves and old logging bunkers near the ridge, following clues from the notebook's cryptic entries. Despite months of meticulous work, the case retained its fog of uncertainty. The ambivalent evidence, partial DNA, and conflicting testimonies created a web of possibilities rather than clear answers. Yet the discovery of the backpack and remains rekindled hope for closure. Families waited anxiously as every fragment, every clue promised to unravel the fate of Jay and Alana, two young adventurers swallowed by a forest that guards its secrets fiercely. The investigation was far from over, and the path ahead was shadowed by doubt, contradiction, and the haunting silence of a vanished trail. The months following the backpack discovery saw the case spiral into a web of contradictions, dead ends, and media frenzy. As forensic teams sifted through evidence and investigators scrutinized witness accounts, the public's attention grew, fueled by sensational headlines and online speculation. But behind the scenes, law enforcement struggled with fractured leads and competing narratives. One of the biggest obstacles came from within the investigation itself. Conflicting statements from Richard Howard continued to hamper progress. Despite being a prime person of interest, he maintained a cryptic silence on key questions. When confronted with the DNA evidence found on the cord near the hanging remains, Howard dismissed it as contamination, suggesting that multiple hikers had passed through the area over the years. Yet investigators found no record of Howard submitting his own DNA for comparison initially, raising suspicions of deliberate evasion. Around the same time, the couple's families grew increasingly frustrated. Meredith Kessler publicly criticized the slow pace and lack of transparency from law enforcement. "We deserve answers," she said in a televised interview. Not rumors or half-truths. Alana's parents, meanwhile, remained painfully hopeful but resigned to the uncertainty that had haunted them for years. Adding to the tension, local media outlets began circulating alternative theories, some more grounded than others. Fringe bloggers speculated about forest cults and secret logging company cover-ups. Others claimed a government conspiracy to suppress information about the area's history of disappearances. Authorities repeatedly issued statements urging caution and discouraging public interference in the ongoing investigation. Yet, new developments emerged unexpectedly from an unlikely source. A former Forest Service employee, Mark Daniels, contacted detectives with critical information. Daniels claimed that during the years following the Kessler-Doyle disappearance, several unofficial forest access points, closed off due to landslides, had been secretly used for illicit activities. He alleged these included illegal logging operations and unauthorized camping by transient groups. Daniels's testimony prompted investigators to revisit old maps and satellite imagery. They uncovered subtle traces of human activity in remote sectors of the forest, including makeshift shelters and recently disturbed soil. A covert surveillance operation was launched to monitor these zones, hoping to identify potential suspects or witnesses. Meanwhile, forensic experts worked diligently on the GoPro footage, uncovering fragments previously obscured by damage. Among the images was a brief, chilling frame of a shadowed figure watching the couple from behind a dense cluster of trees. The figure's features were indistinct, but their posture suggested vigilance, perhaps even hostility. This discovery shifted the narrative toward foul play, though the identity and motives of this figure remained unknown. Back in the field, search teams endured harsh weather as winter approached. Their efforts uncovered a torn piece of Alana's jacket, snagged on a barbed wire fence roughly 2 miles east of the hanging site, far from any known trails. The fabric showed signs of stress consistent with a struggle, but no further evidence was nearby. Law enforcement widened their focus to include several persons of interest, including transient workers and hunters, reported in the area during the disappearance period. Several were interviewed and cleared, but a few accounts contained discrepancies warranting follow-up. One local hunter, in particular, had been evasive about his whereabouts on October 27, 28, 2016, and was linked through phone records to calls made near the forest boundary days before the disappearance. In an unexpected twist, a long-suppressed 911 call from a nearby town was rediscovered during evidence review. The call, placed in the early hours of October 28th, captured a man's fragmented report of strange sounds and someone yelling for help near a logging road close to Black Hollow. The caller hung up abruptly, and the call had been dismissed at the time as a prank or animal noise. Detectives immediately reopened this lead, analyzing audio enhancements and trying to locate the caller. Unfortunately, The number was traced to a prepaid burner phone, never linked conclusively to a person. The call added a layer of urgency and uncertainty. Was someone trying to warn rescuers? Or was it a desperate cry from one of the missing? The investigation, once a straightforward missing persons case, had become a complex puzzle of incomplete evidence, shadowy figures, and unanswered questions. For the Kessler and Doyle families, the newfound leads offered fragile hope mingled with renewed anguish. As spring approached in 2024, forensic analysts reported a breakthrough with DNA recovered from the rope and clothing fragments. Partial matches pointed toward an unidentified male, but the profile was incomplete, too degraded for full identification, yet sufficient to exclude the known suspects. Law enforcement continued to widen the net, consulting with FBI behavioral analysts and cold case experts. The possibility of an unknown assailant with a prior history of forest-related offenses was raised. Meanwhile, tensions between investigative teams grew, compounded by public pressure and media scrutiny. Accusations of mismanagement and interagency conflict surfaced. The Black Hollow case became emblematic of the difficulties inherent in solving crimes in vast, remote wilderness areas where nature can erase traces and memory fades. Despite the obstacles, the discovery of the backpack and remains had sparked a renewed determination. Every piece of evidence was being analyzed with modern technology unavailable 7 years ago. Investigators mapped digital timelines, re-examined witness testimonies for inconsistencies, and followed faint trails in the data, each step a cautious advance through the fog of the past. Though the main suspect's identity remained elusive and Alana's fate unknown, the investigation was far from dormant. The haunting forest retained its silence, but those searching for truth refused to let it be permanent. The months turned into years, yet the shadow cast by the Black Hollow disappearance lingered, an unresolved enigma that tested the limits of forensic science, investigative perseverance, and the endurance of those left behind. By late 2024, forensic teams had exhausted many leads. The partial DNA profile recovered from the cord and torn clothing, while narrowed down through national databases, failed to match any known offender. The unidentified male, possibly the presence of a third party, remained a ghost, a missing piece in the grim puzzle. Alana Doyle's remains, hauntingly absent, remained undiscovered despite extensive ground and aerial searches. Some speculated she had been taken far from the forest, while others feared a fate buried deep within the wilderness, concealed forever by time and terrain. Investigators compiled their findings into a comprehensive cold case file, noting several key points: J. Kessler's last known coordinates, the cryptic notebook entries, and the ambiguous figures surrounding the case. Particularly Richard Howard, whose contradictory statements continued to cloud suspicion without conclusive proof of involvement. Multiple forensic reports underscored that while Jay likely died by hanging, it was unclear if it was voluntary, accidental, or inflicted. The rope's knots suggested familiarity, but did not conclusively indicate suicide or homicide. The absence of defensive wounds on Jay's remains left the manner of death ambiguous. The GoPro footage, despite enhancements, could not identify the shadowed figure nor clarify the moments preceding the couple's final hours. With no additional digital data recovered from Alana's phone or other devices, the couple's movements beyond the last known location remained speculative. The families grappled with these partial truths and persistent unknowns. Meredith Kessler expressed a fragile acceptance. We may never know everything, but we hold on to the facts we have. Jay was brave and curious. I believe he fought to survive. Alana's parents voiced enduring pain and unanswered questions. Her absence is a void we live with daily, her mother said quietly. We just want to remember her, not the mystery. The case illuminated the stark realities of wilderness disappearances, the limits of evidence preservation in natural settings, the complicating factors of isolated terrain, and the challenge of piecing together fragmented digital and physical clues years later. In a final public statement, the FBI emphasized the case's complexity. While progress has been made and significant evidence uncovered, the Black Hollow disappearance remains unsolved. We continue to review new information as it arises and urge anyone with credible knowledge to come forward. Experts reflected on the broader implications. Detective Teresa Burke, involved early in the case, commented, "This investigation reveals how even with technology and resources, nature can obscure truth. The passage of time erodes evidence and memories alike. Sometimes, closure is partial, an acceptance of ambiguity. The haunting forest of Black Hollow remains, in many ways, unchanged. Its towering pines and dense undergrowth conceal stories untold, while paths fade and echoes of footsteps dissolve into wind. For Jay and Alana, the forest was both a place of adventure and mystery, where their lives intersected fatefully with the unknown. Their disappearance and the long, painstaking search that followed serve as a somber reminder of the fragile boundary between exploration and peril, and the enduring human quest for answers when that boundary is crossed. The case file now rests, among many others, a record of hope, loss, and the complex interplay of nature and investigation. And in the silence of the trees, the questions remain.